guest, James G. Matlock, will be here to talk about reincarnation, and not only in humans, but for pets as well. So give us a few minutes to get set up, and we'll see you there. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, good evening. Sacramento is still afternoon. Back east, what we're bordering on, 9:30 in the evening. But good afternoon. This is California Haunts. I'm Charlotte. I'm the host for the next hour or so. I like it when that little peak of music comes up behind me. I don't know why it does that, but that's been doing that. Ghosties, maybe, right? Maybe we got ghosties. Anyway, thank you for coming. And again, my name is Charlotte, and I will be your host for the next hour. I am also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of lovely Sacramento, California. We're 35 strong up and down the state. If you need help with any of your paranormal needs, I have somebody located almost everywhere in the state of California, so we can get to you. And the beautiful part is, we don't charge. We don't charge for the stuff. So we like to come out and educate people about the paranormal, and that's what we're out to help. So if you do have anything happening in your house that you think might be paranormal, give me a ring, shoot me an email, give me a private message on Facebook. I'll get back to you right away. Okay? Anyway, welcome. We got a great show lined up for you. For you guys that are just new watching us, welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to have you. If you're watching from YouTube, please subscribe. There's a little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner down there with a magnifying glass and a Sherlock Holmes hat on. That's our California Haunts mascot. Please hit that button to subscribe, because we're always looking for subscribers. And if you go back through all the shows that we've done, you'll see that we have a lot of topics, and I'm talking a lot, not just paranormal topics. So that's for you to peruse in your enjoyment. Tonight, I'm excited. Tonight, my guest, James G. Matlock. Mr. Matlock has studied reincarnation. Why am I excited about that? Because like anybody else, I like to watch those TV shows, like the kids that have claimed to have other lives or have other mothers and fathers and things like that. And also, in my own experience with my dog, my newest dog, Gypsy, to me is a perfect example of reincarnation. She may not look exactly like the first Kelpie I had, Maddie, but anybody that sees her will tell you, oh my God, it's Maddie. And her personality is a lot like Maddie's personality. A lot like it. So I don't think it's coincidence. And I had this dream after Maddie passed away. And what happened in this dream was that I was walking down my street, going house to house, looking at Kelpies. And a voice came into my head. And it said, look for a black Kelpie. It'll be me. So I waited a few years. I had a rescue Kelpie, and she had been mistreated. And so I wanted to give her the chance to have a life of her own with one person and all that. And so she stayed with me for like 8 years. She passed away in December at 17. And then I really wasn't looking for a dog at that point. I wasn't in the mood. And then the breeder that I normally get my dogs back from sent me a photo of Gypsy. And when I saw her, the first thing that hit me was, oh my God, she looks like Maddie. And I knew it. There was a connection instantly. So I knew I had to go get her. So that's what we did. My friend and I, drove out to get her. And she's here. And she's so much like my Maddie dog. I can't believe it. In fact, sometimes when I'm in the kitchen doing dishes or whatever, and I look back over my shoulder and I see her, I have to stop myself to remember that it's Gypsy and not Maddie. So I'm excited about it. Really excited. So this is why I'm so excited to have this gentleman on, so we can talk about reincarnation tonight, and that's what we're going to talk about. So anyway, I'm going to let him tell you about himself. Hi, Jerry. Hello, Jen. I'm going to let him talk to tell you about himself, because if I do it, you know how I am. Yuck. I'll blow it, right? All right, so here we go. Hello, sir.
Okay. Hi, Charlotte. Listen, yeah, am I on?
Yes.
Hi. I wasn't. I was in if you want me to just introduce myself, say who I am, and then turn it over, or how do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess she introduced me, but I go by Jim. I'm just more comfortable being called Jim, although my professional name is James G. Um, I've I've been involved in parapsychology in since the mid 1980s. I started reading on reincarnation around 80 as best as I can reconstruct it at this point. So I've been doing this for a while now, and my interest is not um, the regressions that so many people think about immediately when they think about reincarnation. I work more in the vein of Ian Stevenson, if any of you know him. And what he did, beginning in the early 1960s, is actually go out into the field and talk to children, interview children and their parents, and, and those who heard the kids talk about previous lives. Um, and what he was interested in doing, not just collecting stories, but actually investigating them as cases and seeing if he could verify as correct what children said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it turned out that in many of his cases, the families had already done that because the children, and we're talking about young kids, like 2 or 3 years old, that young, who are saying just these incredible about their previous families and demand
Mm-hmm.
to be taken back to them. Now, a lot of his cases were in Asia, and places that the children remembered were usually close by in another village, another town, not far away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the lives that they had lived were not that far in the past,
Mm-hmm.
maybe only a few months, maybe only at most a few years. And it was possible then for actually to take the kids back to these places and the kids to meet their previous families, right?
Right.
And that this type of thing made it very easy then for Stevenson to investigate and verify the memory claims. Um, yeah. Um, so, maybe I'm getting ahead of things here.
No,
Research
no,
is,
no.
I'm about the research, right? And so, in order to understand me, you have to have this. Anyway. So, and when he did that, uh, he found that it was more than just memories that were being verified. When when the previous person was identified, he then could see that the traits. And you mentioned that in your dog, and
Mm-hmm.
because the animal case, a lot of them very similar to the human cases. Should be surprised. We're animals too, right?
Uh-huh.
So but that's one of the incredible thing about the non-human animal cases is that they're very similar to the human cases. So when these cases were verified by the memories, it turns out that there were a lot of these behavioral similarities too, and personality similarities. Um, in addition to that, there were also physical things. Sometimes, even if they weren't in the same family, and in Asia they usually aren't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there was this resemblance, not just facial resemblance that the many people know, of physical resemblance, and of course birthmarks. Often are in the place of wounds, look like the wounds, but they can be anything. They can be like earring holes, they can be tattoos, just anything of significance to the previous person gets carried over. Anyway, I became totally fascinating with this material. And so I've stayed with it all these years. And so that's me, I guess. And now I'll let you for a while and ask me some questions.
Well, it is fascinating because I remember when his studies were just coming out. I watched this thing on
Are you
KVIE
there? Do
about
we have a
it.
lag?
Yeah, there's a leg. We got a slight leg. But I watched this thing on KVIE about it, and I remember, there wasn't a lot of people studying it at that time. But I remember what an
Okay.
imprint it made on me, because it was talking about how the scars we have, could be related to a past life and whatnot.
Yeah. And not all, they're not, you know, when they hear about this, think, oh, I have it related to a previous life. Well, not necessarily. There are a lot of reasons for birthmarks, right? They can be genetic, they something could have happened in the womb to produce the birthmark. So they're not all reincarnation related, but some are. Um, and it's interesting because the ones that are unusual. They are unusual looking, and they're often in places, but they're often the colored ones are the type of thing that the mind, let's say, the mind through psychokinesis, and I'm sure your listeners or viewers are familiar with that concept of the mind over matter psychokinesis, that the mind itself could be producing these effects by rearranging the melanin in the skin to make the darker birthmarks. Uh, you know, so produce moles or other kinds of things that could easily be done, but with the mind acting on the body, it makes sense. One can understand it, how the process of transmitting physical things could be done psycho through the mind. And I think that's how it happens, because obviously, there's no physical, you're in a different body, right? You're a different, you know.
Right. I've seen these cases, like that show that was on about that. I don't even know if it's on anymore, but there was a TV show about this. Could a dog? Yes, a dog can come back. My dog came back. Trust me. And yeah, here's a question in the chat room. Could a dog come back as a cat?
I don't think so. From what we can, and animals don't, non-human animals don't come, and vice versa. From what we see, variation is exclusively in species lines. Be all sorts of animals, but and I think the reason for that is that what reincarnates. People say this. Oh, what's the soul? That puzzled me for a while, until I realized the easy to understand reincarnation is simply consciousness, right? And if we we can think of the soul as consciousness if we want, or we can think of the soul as being the sort of the focus of consciousness itself, right? But it all comes. But reincarnation involves the survival of consciousness after death. We see that in hauntings too. I mean, you're haunting in apparitions, that involves also the survival of consciousness, of identity. And I think that our consciousness has evolved, has developed to work in our bodies, right? And each species, therefore, has a different sort of consciousness. And that means that consciousness is developed work well. And I think that's why they see reincarnation in species lines.
Sure.
And not across species.
The other thing I find fascinating is that you would think that reincarnation would happen fast.
Here I am. Okay.
Yeah, we're good. You're there. I see you. You would think that reincarnation would happen fast, but like in the case with the dog, I mean, there were 6 years in between when she passed to being with this dog. And I just find it interesting. But then when you look at some of the cases of reincarnation anyway, like the little boy who was drawing pictures of his fighter plane in World War II. I don't know if you saw that case, the one where they ended up going to Pearl Harbor and saying goodbye to his past life. So I mean, I guess it could take years before they pick a family, or I don't know how that would.
Right. It can. The interval varies. It's just Asia. It's often much shorter than in the West. In the West, it's not unusual for things like that fighter pilot James Leininger, which is several decades. That's usual in the West. In Asia, there are cases that there not many of them. There are many more cases in Asia where it's just a few months or years, and we're talking about from death to birth. So yes, in some of these cases, the interval is less than 9 months, which means that the death occurred, while gestation was underway, which is another thing about reincarnation, but it can be
Right.
that short, or it can be decades long.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't surprise me that it was some years before you found your dog again.
Well, I just wonder why like you say it's shorter in Asian countries than it is here. I just wonder why it works that way.
Yeah, it is a puzzle. We don't really know. I mean, there's some ideas about it. One idea is that in the West, we have this idea that we meet our loved one, and how can they meet us if they've reincarnated? That would be a factor that draws it out in the West. Also, in Asia, you've got a much greater population density, right? So there are more possibilities of reincarnating, coming. If there are more children available when you die, that's going to encourage you to come back faster, and that could be a factor too. But we don't really know.
Right. Right. And how many? I understand that you did a Facebook study, right?
A Facebook study. I have a Facebook group.
Right. 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 That's what I meant.
I have a Facebook group, and it's mainly an educational group. That is, it's called Signs of Reincarnation. If anybody's on Facebook and interested in joining it, called Signs of Reincarnation. And the reason that I founded it was this search that I'm talking about better known, because many people aren't, that they may know Ian Stevenson's name. They may have some general concepts of it. They may have heard, of other people who have past life memories, or of children who do. Their own children may. Research is not nearly well known as it ought to be, and so that's what. Through the group, I've learned of a number of cases that I've investigated and studied, and have written about, and am writing about.
What do you think is the? Go ahead. What do you think is the most common thing that happens with these reincarnations?
With them, do you want to specific?
If there's a common theme,
play out.
Yeah. If there's a common theme with them, that you're noticing a pattern.
Patterns in different ways. For these, like I mentioned, kids as young as 2 and 3, sometimes even that, send their first words. They'll say things that turn out later to be the previous life. Now, James Leininger, you were talking about you remember the being killed in World War II off Iwo Jima, during the battle for Iwo Jima off a different island. was began to have signs of this as early as 16 months. And he was saying things before he was 2 years old. So it can be very early, but if kids start talking around age 3, talking about these memories around age 3, yeah, but 2 to 3 is the basic age. Some later. So that's one of the most common things, and that's cross cultural. We see that everywhere. That's the one universal things is this age of starting. As I say, I mean, sometimes all they'll say is, you know, um, you know, I used to have different parents or something like that, and that's all they'll say. Or they've come back in the same family, and this, that's particularly a lot of cases with the same family. They can say, "Do you remember when I gave you a bath, right, or put you to bed, or whatever? Do you remember?" And that may be all they say. But there are other things that suggest that they were their grandparents or whatever, or great grandparents. So, but then we see patterns in that, like of the intermission. Like I said, I mean, the median intermission in Asia is much shorter than the median intermission in the West. And that's it's very strong, the difference there, and we see it in case after case after case, right? So it's a pattern. What other patterns? I haven't mentioned my writings yet.
Go ahead.
But I have a couple of books out. I also do a lot of writing on about reincarnation for what's called the Psi Encyclopedia. And for the Psi Encyclopedia, I actually have an article called Patterns in Reincarnation Cases. And that'll go into all of the patterns there, because I'm just not bringing them to mind now. It's 3 hours later for me. And I'm just, of all the, but there are universal patterns, near universal patterns, and cultural linked patterns that I talk about in that article.
Is it hard for parents, when their child first starts to say these things? Do the parents kind of think they're, and I don't want to say local, I just want, is it a thing where the parents, kind of blow it off at first, but then as the child keeps saying this stuff, maybe they start to look at getting the child some help?
Depends on what it is that they're saying, actually, but in both about the help part of it. But in both in the West, yes, I mean, this. But as they go on and on and on, and more insistent about it, it's really hard to. I mean, you at a certain point, even Western parents, even those who start off being skeptical and dismissive of it, have to take it seriously, because it's just, and coming back again to the James Leininger case, his father had to go for a long time, but he was driven really to see whether there's any substance to it. He was trying to disprove it, first of all, but then as he more and more intrigued, is more and more, and he eventually became convinced of it. And this is true of many Western parents. They eventually become convinced, because this is no way to explain what their kids are saying and doing, and, other than just something accepting.
Mm-hmm. And I guess if you're sitting there and your kid's got crayons and he's drawing like in the case of James, he's drawing these airplanes, that are getting hit by fire. I guess that's going to get your attention, because the kid's only 2 or 3.
Yeah, I know. But where does this come from? I mean, yeah. And nobody in the family had a military background or an aviation. Here's this kid drawing all these battle scenes and flak shooting up at the plane, including that that his plane, that he was a pilot and he was shot down. So he's drawing his memories, right? I mean, and he remembered names, important clues that his father used in to be able to, what we call, solve the case, which is, identify the previous person. Yeah, no, that's an important.
Now, the question I have too about all this is that it's a lot like with psychic abilities that kids have. When they're real little, they tend to have the psychic abilities. As they get older, the abilities wane because they get other interests and stuff. Does that happen in these cases?
Yeah, the memories do wane after, by 5 to 7 or so. They're often fading, but not always. Some kids retain the memories on into adulthood, um, but but many of them, they do have this fading. And as I say, I mean, some, even in the best cases, you'll find fading often. But in some cases, they just develop. They'll just say one or two things, and that's it.
It's all fascinating to
But
me.
it's important to understand that we are talking about memory here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, this lag is going to get into our
That's
way
okay. I'm adjusting. We're good. It's
ones.
okay.
But I say this because, uh, yeah, yeah. So I just want to make the point that we're dealing with memory here and not with psychic stuff.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because things, some of these kids do have psychic abilities too, but it's in a very small minority. And then there are many kids who have psychic abilities who don't have past life memories. That's one thing.
That's interesting.
But the past memories, many characteristics of memories of the present life. They're associative, things would trigger the memories. Remember things from the end of the life, which is called a recency effect, when you're talking about in a present life memory, and they're there again and again and again. I mean, the the characteristics of these memories, they don't resemble psi or psychic abilities. They resemble memory, and so it's important to keep that separate. But yeah, to keep the two things separate, and just but yeah, but um but some of these kids do have psychic abilities, and they do in a way follow the same pattern. And the kids, do have more psychic operations, more, they do feel in contact more, you know I mean, something the mental there that makes it both possible to exercise psychic abilities and to for these memories to come up. But
Yeah, I just find all this to be utterly fascinating. But what I was just trying to say, yeah, I find it interesting that the kids that tend to have psychic abilities don't have these past life experiences, and that's kind of fascinating. That would be a study, in of itself, to see why. To see why these kids that have this other ability don't have the past life stuff. But
yeah.
as far as remembering stuff, I mean, when you're kid, I mean, if you're kid, I know I had a vivid imagination as a kid, and it makes you wonder, like when your kids are play acting with other kids, if they're not play acting in their life, stuff that they remember, and it's not just play.
Well, it does make you wonder about, and in some cases, it's not. I mean, James Leininger liked to play at being a soldier. And Ian Stevenson found that common. for these kids to play in ways uh, reminiscent of the previous life. I mean, in the occupations of the previous from the previous life, they would act out sometimes the way the previous person had died. I mean, these types of things. So yes, children's play can very definitely relate. Not all of it, not always, of course, but uh, oftentimes children's plays does relate to the previous life in some way.
What kind of things should parents look out for, with their young kids? I mean, like we kind of touched on them saying stuff, different things, but what do you think are trigger things for parents to look out for when they suspect their child might actually be talking about a past life?
Well, I mean, the children will be clear. They'll say things. I mean, like um, I had another mother before. I mean, they'll be that direct about it. You know, um, so I guess the main thing is listen to them. Allow them to talk. Don't dismiss. Don't make them. They're just making up stories because they're probably not. And that's not how they feel about it, right? They feel inside that they were these people, and they'll talk in first person, right? I mean, they identify with the people they were before. They remember them. Uh, you can do really is to tell the kids. Oh, I mean, making all this up. The kids know they're not putting it up. They feel that very. The parents are the last lives that need to be telling them that what you feel is not real, right?
Right.
So I would say that's a very important thing. Listen to them, honor them. Um, um, don't necessarily draw them out, though, because a lot of times these memories are about not very nice to deal with. And so if you know, if the memories are pressing so strongly on the kids that they have to get them out, allow them to come out and help them, support them. But don't draw out a lot of, I mean, as a parent, you want to know, I mean, what's this about? But your responsibility as a parent is to help your child, of course. And so, the children have to come first. And yeah, to them, honor them, but don't necessarily, support it, but don't necessarily encourage it through asking questions and drawing it out.
Is it better in a situation where you think your child might be talking to you about a past life to seek somebody such as yourself to speak with?
Um, I guess, yeah, I mean, I agree for that. I mean, because coming on, we have a lot of people coming on to talk, and what we do, the admins, if, you know, you're not alone, right? Other people will jump in and it'll be very clear you're not alone. But we'll also try to position this in the context of where this is, where it fits the patterns. So that's a good place to go. I would say, your question was to come to a research. It depends on how developed the case is. I mean, these cases are really so common. They're unbelievably common that we researchers, I mean, we're about so many, we don't need to be by every single case. But if it's a relatively well-developed case, yeah, we're to hear about it. And so, yeah, I mean, and there are a fair number of cases like that, particularly want to have it investigated, feel like it deserves to be
Mhm.
investigated, and you need help with that. To having it documented and looked into, yeah, come to one of us. Um, but but short of that, go to these groups, and our group is one of several on Facebook where you can share these things. We happen to be more researchers, so we're unique. There are,
Mhm.
but on Reddit too, on Twitter, I mean, all over social media, people will share these accounts now, and so there are places to go to get support and understanding.
Now, I didn't realize that, like you say, it's very common for this. I didn't realize how common it is until I'm talking to you. I mean, really, what is your estimate on how many children are going through this?
Yeah, I wish we had a really good estimate of it. We don't. We need surveys. There was a survey done in the Charlottesville area a few years ago that that reached an astonishing figure of 6% of
Wow.
kids in claiming to. Um, but there are questions about that. I mean, it just seems incredibly high. Um, uh, and Unfortunately, it was that they hired it out, and it was a telephone survey, and you follow it up, and so I get behind that figure, and see what really drove it. Um, yeah, I mean, people in everyday life, I think still don't about these things very much.
Mhm.
However, to group line or to one of these places that allows to be discussed, we get a lot of people coming in. I think it has become much easier to share these experiences social media, and so that's where we hear about them now in a way that we haven't heard about them before. But outside of this, people are still sort of outside of these groups where people feel comfortable talking about their experiences. Oftentimes they just don't. I'm sure you've run into this with the haunting stuff too. I mean,
Sure.
people oftentimes just keep it quiet, But on the other hand, if you get into this, then you start hearing stories and stories and stories and stories, and you start realizing how common the whole phenomenon is.
Hmm. I think, like you say, people are becoming more open, but I think it's the TV shows that are driving it. Like with paranormal stuff, like you say, people kept it quiet for a long time. But with shows like Ghost in My Child, these different things that are coming on, people don't feel so. I don't want to say embarrassed, but like they
Yeah,
want to hide it. Like
yeah,
they feel like they can be more
yeah.
open about what their kids are saying.
That's right. Now you still do get a resistance. Sometimes uh, I got three examples pressing on my mind now of cases that I studied. Um, the first one was one I wrote about called Signs of Reincarnation. Very interesting case where a girl uh, who remembered having died in a plane when a Pan Am plane, this is 1982, crashed into her home. I mean, this was, what at the time it was the third worst aviation disaster in the U.S.
Hmm.
The plane when she right after off and came down less than a mile from the end of the runway, crashed into a residential neighborhood outside of New Orleans. This is the New Orleans airport. Um, anyway, the girl in Oklahoma remembered this plane crash. Okay, went. to New Orleans. After interviewing her in Oklahoma, I went to Kenner, um, which is where New Orleans, where the airport is. Not knowing what sort of reception I would meet, and I was very surprised at how that none of her old friends dismissed it. None of the neighborhood dismissed it. They just accepted it. Maybe it's news because you get a lot of weird stuff in New Orleans. People are more receptive there. I don't know. But then other cases that I've looked into, there is more resistance from the family in particular. And you also get the situation sometimes, and it can be very awkward, where one spouse, to get the acquaintance with the kid, is convinced and the father is not. And that obviously that creates problems in the family. So you get these sorts of, and in these cases you have to be prepared to deal with all of this stuff. But I've been very surprised at how receptive people are overall.
Well, I was thinking about the United States in general and how everybody tried to think logically over here, whereas these other countries like India and over in Asia, Southeast Asia, and all those places, they believed in this stuff for a long time. Taken a while to catch on.
That's right. And this is something people don't realize, people here don't realize about there, and that is that families there do not necessarily welcome the kids talking about the previous lives. They may believe them, but they don't necessarily welcome them. Maybe try to suppress the memories. Because they're this sort of this folk idea, this myth that these kids are going to die young. There's no evidence for that at all. There's also the idea, and there may be more basis for this, that they'll want to go back to the previous families will them back and will try them. Where they do try to, where they actually are adopted previous families, cases like that. But very often the parents in Asia, I almost said typically, but I don't think it's typical, but very often the parents will to suppress the memories, and this comes up even in but they're not successful at it, and so this comes up because just continue to suppress it, and the more the parents try, the more it can turn the kids against the parents, and that you don't want. In Stevenson's cases, the father actually beat the kid, and it made him turn against his father. But he continued to talk about it. He continued to talk about it with people who would listen. So but so these efforts are made, is my point. So another interesting finding about an Indian researcher, large sample of cases, and looking at this issue, she found that when that mothers in particular would allow their children to talk, they didn't necessarily try to suppress them. Involved, and then they tried to suppress them. Okay, so and that was the fear that they were going to lose the children.
Interesting, very interesting. But it kind of makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, men, and I hate to say it, mothers are so open with their children, they listen to everything they say, because they're with the kids all the time. And sometimes men aren't quite as open.
Yeah, it does make sense.
So you can understand. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and they're not with them all the time. So they don't. I'm sure their wives. That's not the same as hearing them.
okay. I'm trying to time the delay. So, what do you think? I mean, do you think more and more people are going to come forward, with kids that are having this issue? Like, do you think more people?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Um, Definitely. I mean, things are changing. I mean, um, and yes, we will definitely hear about more of these cases. Definitely. In fact, already, I mean, there are more cases that we can study. Researchers can really limited in time and in the resource available. We can only do so much, and so, you know, but as as people become more aware of this research, more people there'll be more researchers, right? Um, uh, and it's also, I, the, I'm also gratified that a lot of young people, graduate students, college students, are taking an interest in this area. Um, Now, often it's hard for them to fit it normally into their educational careers, but reincarnation, I mean, it crosses everything, every area. Just about any field you go into can be back to the reincarnation case research.
Now we talked about the little boy who was the pilot in World War II, and you talked about the Pan Am kid, little girl. Is there any other case that sticks out in your mind? Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to do one adjustment here. Hang on one second. Let's
Well,
move something
another
up.
one that I like to talk about, and this one I'm
Sure.
still researching, so I haven't written it up yet. Case, um, where the kid who remembered the death was born in England. He died in a tornado, and he was talking about in northern Alabama and northern Georgia, um, and it was a major tornado outbreak. This is another one that we have it was a news event.
I just cut it off. Yeah. Hang on one second. I'm going to try something. Okay. Okay, everybody hang loose. Okay, I'm trying to get through this delay. See if I can do something with the delay here. Where are we on? We're on that connect. Let me switch. Let me my end real quick. We only got about 10 minutes to go anyway. Okay, are you there? He's frozen. Are you there? Okay. All right. Well, that didn't work. Let me try another one. This one. Okay, here we go. Let me try this. All right, let's try this one again. See if I can get us back in. All right. Well, I guess the delay finally got us. And anyhow, yes. Are you there?
Okay.
Give it a minute.
Yeah, I'm here. We're probably still in delay, but I'm here.
To see if we can fix it.
So, yes, I'm here.
Okay, back to
so
tornado.
Anyway, the
Okay.
Yeah, I am. These the one has to put up with, unfortunately. So, yeah, yeah. I don't know the tornado. So I was talking about this who was killed in a tornado in northern Georgia, and then was reborn in England. A kid, and the British kid remembered this, and he remembered it in enough detail that his mother came to my Facebook group about it, wanting help trying to solve the case. And so she wrote about it, and another member saw what she was writing, and it reminded her of this story. And so she brought in the mother of the kid who was killed. The case was solved in my group.
Wow.
By bringing the mothers, and that's and this gets into something we haven't really talked about that much, and that is that majority of the cases are in the same region, the same culture, but there are some of these international cases. James Leininger also, I mean, he died in Japan, was reborn in the States, but he was American, right? He was an American pilot. He came back home. But here we have an American kid who's reborn in England.
Well, that's really interesting. I never thought about that either, because you always think that they're going to be born in the same country. So that's really cool. That is really cool.
And remembered things clearly enough that we could verify the memories and solve the case. And then it turned out, I mean, a lot of other things, his behaviors, he has a birthmark that fits. I mean, not just, a few chance things, it's details that fit.
That is really, really cool. That is really, really cool. So what's next for you?
Yeah. Oh, I'm just, I'm of an age now where I really don't want to do anything else except for reincarnation, pretty much. Kinds of survival research, but particularly reincarnation. This work is focusing, the research in my writing is on is related to reincarnation, almost all of it.
Okay. And how can people find you?
So, yeah. One of the, as I say, I do a lot of writing for the Science Encyclopedia, which is an online thing. I'm also supposed to be writing a book about Ian Stevenson. I am. It's going kind of slowly. And the reception of it. So it's important for me to finish it and get it out there. It's also I'm really interested in it. So that's those are the stuff that I'm doing.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay. And how can people find you then, if they want to contact you? Okay, I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on. I learned so much about this, and I'd love to get you on another night when we can get the internet working right. Jeez, man, who knows what was going on tonight? But I really
on
appreciate
Facebook, I'm Jim Matlock, and you see picture look. I also have a website, which is jamesgmatlock.com. Or you can Google my name, and all sorts of things will come up. It's not hard for people, actually, so. Well, I'm happy to be here, and I'll be glad. But I deal with, I don't know whether I'm in Durham, North, and I don't know whether it's the connection here. It's even worse when I'm in Tennessee a lot too. There, we would not be able to do this at all. But these lags, I experience these lags a lot. This is one reason why I do more audio than the video, because of them. But it's not necessarily connection or your setup.
It's not a problem, sir. I'd love to get you back on to talk to you further about this stuff, if that's okay. But next time we'll probably just do it, audio, just straight audio. But I want to thank you for coming on.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. I'll be happy to come back whenever you want me to.
Sounds good. You have a good weekend, okay?
It's really fascinating.
All right, you have a good weekend,
I'd
okay?
be happy to come back.
All right, sir. Have a good evening. Okay. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening. Anyway, that was fun, and hopefully he'll come back. I know there was a lag. I apologize for the lag. It happens. I mean, this is technology. Happens to the best of us. I figured once the show started rolling, I was just going to keep rolling because, with the lag to get his phone number, get everything arranged, email and everything. But anyway, I'm glad he came on. I learned a lot about reincarnation. I love watching those shows, and I've been thinking about doing studies like that through my paranormal team as well. To talk about reincarnation. Tomorrow we're off. Saturday we're off, but Sunday we'll be back with the Mojave incident, 6 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be reading about that. Now Monday is going to be kind of cool. I've got a lady named Marianne Corbett's coming on, and she's going to be talking about names and numbers and their meanings, their astrological meanings, and what they could mean for you. So she's going to be on with us Monday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Uh, I know you guys watching on YouTube. Please subscribe. This is not a reflection of how we do things. This is just one of those days you run into this stuff, and that's the risk you take when you do it through video like this. And so I guess the dice didn't roll in my direction very well today. I kind of feel bad for him because he was struggling on his end. I was trying to time it, but But anyway, if you could subscribe, that would be great. It's that little ghost down at the bottom right-hand corner with the magnifying glass and the Sherlock Holmes hat on, because we do have all kinds of videos on all kinds of topics. You can check that out. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, this is going to be great. Share it with 5 of your enemies and people you don't like. We're equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio, and I really appreciate you guys sticking with us throughout the interview. You can check us out at CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com. I'm going to be teaching a Ghost Hunting 101 class in a couple of weeks. I'll have information up about that this weekend. And if you want to check out the paranormal team itself, that's CaliforniaHaunts.org. Do you see that ticker at the bottom of the page? That is because California Haunts does not charge for their paranormal services. So when we go out to somebody's house, whether it's here locally in Sacramento or we drive halfway across the state, we do it for free because we're here to inform and educate people about the paranormal. So if you kind of help it, I hate begging, it sucks. It just really, really bites. But I pay for all this stuff. I pay for the internet. I pay for the lights. I pay for the mic. I pay for everything, including the equipment for the paranormal group. So if you could help me out a little bit, that would be great. And you can do that at paypal.me at California Haunts or Venmo and just type in California Haunts. That would be wonderful. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming. I will see you Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific for the Mojave incident. Have a good one. Oh, I'm in the wrong button. See, I'm even on the wrong page. This is how the day's gone. Have a good one, you guys.